On behalf of the International Housewares Association, we'd like to welcome you to this morning's presentation, Top Trends 2014, The New Normal, How to Survive and Thrive in Our Erratic Marketplace. Whether you're a retailer, manufacturer, or wholesaler, a single word encapsulates today's most crucial business imperative: adapt. IHA's consumer trend forecaster, Tom Mirabile, Senior Vice President of Global Trend and Design for Lifetime Brands, is here with us to share some surprising new facts about the modern consumer and how they live, socialize, and shop. Please welcome Tom Mirabile.
Hi. Well, you can't hide anything back here. Thank you all so much for coming so early. I'm always humbled by how many people show up at such an early hour to hear somebody speak, because if it were me, I'm going to bed right after this. So it's been a really memorable year. How many people had a good year? Show of hands. That's not bad, about half. Sorry, I love statistics, so I always like to compare these things. So I always start off the same way to sort of put myself at ease. I always tell an embarrassing story. And last year, my stories were, to me, so embarrassing that I usually, I thought I've totally run out. Knowing me, that doesn't happen. So, but some of my most embarrassing things happen actually at these shows. And one of them was actually right on that stair back there last year, because just as I was about to get on, there was like a handler or somebody, and she was standing by the stairs, and she said, "Okay, you ready?" I said, "I'm ready." She said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You don't look good." And I said, "Okay, look, nobody knows this, but I'm wearing a new set of Spanx for men that never try that on the first day of a show, because I was having a hard time fitting into my suit." So I heard about them, I bought them, and I could not breathe. So I said, if I go down, just get a scissors and just cut these things up the front. So I don't wear those for presentations anymore. The second thing that was most embarrassing this year was finding out that I had a nut allergy. Well, I kind of knew, but I kind of ignored it. And I went out, and there was chocolate almond butter, and I couldn't resist, so this happened. And yeah, that's my husband behind me pretending he doesn't know me. But it was not a good day. But probably the most memorable one to me was I was getting ready for a presentation and something like this, and I was talking to my brother on the phone, because it always calmed me down a bit. So walking back and forth, and I was packing up everything in my room and sticking it in my bag. And, I said, "Look, Johnny, I got to go. I can't find my phone, and I have to leave for this thing." And he said, "All right." So since I was holding it, I thought, okay, clearly I'm working too hard. But I think that to me was really, how can I put it? It was a much bigger message, because I think all of us spend so much time being so busy that a lot of times we don't get the chance to look up and say, what's the world doing around us? So that's what this is for every year. And we're just going to sort of jump right in. It's the presentation. Please feel free not to take notes. You'll be able to get versions of this PDF, PowerPoint after, so you can just relax, watch it, take a little nappy. So what we wanted to do was, I like to create acronyms because I have a horrible memory and they help me remember things. And what we came up with was AIM for Success. That's what we all have to spend the next year doing. And that acronym stands for three things. The first is adapt. We really believe that we have to be brave. We have to face the new world and say that certain things are not going to change about the economy, about the consumer and how diverse they've become, about how much competition all of us has. So since that's not going to change, we've got to be brave and adapt to it. The second is inspire. And that's really just about bringing your passion to the table. I think a lot of us have gotten in the habit of being careful, and careful puts us out of business, frankly. And then the last is motivate. Be irresistible and be irreplaceable. You know, you've got to motivate people to, you've got to give them a reason to buy. As a matter of fact, now you've really got to give them 10 reasons to buy. We'll talk about those as well. So we sort of we're going to take it through, and there is a lot more information here than I can actually show today. So some slides I'm going to skip right past, and then you'll see it in your other version, just some interesting statistics. Adapt is really about adapting to increased consumer diversity, the fact that there are, as we say every year, there are 4 very significant influential generations spending right now. So it's not just the marketplace that we probably all got used to. Very social Gen Y, very, very physically and mentally active baby boomers and participatory boomers. Certainly Gen X, which is probably best known for being somewhat strapped, and seniors who represent a tremendous amount of affluence. And while they are not necessarily the primary spenders, they bring a lot of money to the boomer home. They influence sales. They influence purchases as well. And the new melting pot, which is a melting pot of, you know, I was talking to somebody the other day about the American melting pot, and they said, well, it used to be a melting pot, but now it's really much more of a sort of a stew. Things don't completely meld together. Different cultures are embraced for being different, and we want to see pieces of all of it. Also adapting to life in a slow growth era and the fact that we're in this for the long haul, and we're not going to turn a corner and all of a sudden it's going to get better. And then finally, just a quick look at the growing influence of technology. But those are all things that we need to adapt to. We like to start off by taking a look at certain generations and how they play in the adapt world. The basics of Gen Y. They're very much early tech adopters in terms of the housewares industry and food prep in particular. Both sexes are definitely foodies. They are very design savvy. They are the new crafter. They're very much a do-it-with-me consumer versus a boomer who's much more of a do-it-for-me consumer. They expect customization, their own ability to customize, or the ability for a retailer or a manufacturer to be able to customize for them or provide them with a product that they can fine-tune to their life's needs. And they are very much about reusing and repurposing. They have built eBay in a lot of ways and continued the build on eBay. So those types of things that allow them to reuse products certainly present the challenge to us who are trying to sell them something new and make it really important that we stay away from being derivative. They want small spaces that live large. They love multifunction in terms of product and in terms of space. So it's important to keep that in mind as we develop products, as we develop lines, that multifunction, collapsibility, things that allow them to save space are really important. There are more renters, certainly. They're waiting longer to buy because they have to. And that means that we have to adapt to them living in smaller spaces and still being able to acquire objects to enable their passions. There are more singles. They're waiting longer to get married. Latest statistic is somewhere on the average of 4 to 6 years longer than before the recession, than pre-recession. So that means, in part, that we have to adapt by by adapting to new gifting needs, and also understanding that since a lot of millennials don't even really aspire to marriage, what do we do when the things that we sell well on registry, people aren't registering to get married? So how do we engage them when marriage isn't something that they're necessarily aspiring to, or certainly necessarily looking at for the next, the immediate future? They're more casual, they create much more open living spaces, and so we have to adapt to the way they entertain, and the fact that, for example, for the dinnerware industry, we may not get to them with a set first, a 20-piece set, or even a 5-piece place setting because they're not getting married. We may get into them first with our brand in an unexpected way, via a single tool or gadget or a single broom or stick good. So it's important to understand that they have that having a price point variance is significant there. They're more frugal. They have more debt than any other generation. And so that means us adapting to and enabling do-it-yourself trends, things that help them save money. America has 9 million engaged couples that are going to get married in the next 12 months. So when we realize that it's a $10 billion industry, it's significant to understand that the two most popular registry items, according to the Knot, are bakeware and kitchen appliances. Kitchen appliances is interesting because registries were traditionally not about major appliances. This is very much infused with small electrics, but it's just great to see that, for housewares to be right in the top two is wonderful. And then we also looked at how many households are going to be created over the next 3 years. When we look at the numbers, certainly they're very impressive. So we did a survey last year, and we got such a great reaction to it that we decided to do it again this year, and many of you probably participated in it. It was called, I forget what it was called, Reality Check. The idea was to say, what do we think we know that we don't know? So what we did was we asked every member of the IHA 10 questions. And we had a very high response rate. Just to show you what the response rate was and who was responding, we had 56% of people were wholesalers, and the remainder were made up, as you see, of manufacturers. So the first reality check slide we're going to talk about is what percentage of the US population was married. We thought that this was really important to understand because how the assumptions that we make about households are often based on marriage. So we gave 3 choices, 31, 41, and 51%. And the actual answer was 51%. What was surprising was that 70% of people got it wrong. Now keep in mind who did this survey. This is us. I mean, and I'm not going to lie, I didn't do any better. So, but keeping ourselves current and making purchasing, developing decisions, assortment decisions based on the fact that, we're basing that on our knowledge, so not having that information is important. Back to millennials, talking about homeowners. Millennials are very smart shoppers. So they really like coupons. They respond very highly to coupons. So we gave you some figures about that. 44% of them say that they spend a significant amount of time entertaining in the kitchen, which means that we need to look at that as why decorative value has really upped in the value equation when we look at kitchen products, particularly food prep, particularly small electrics. I don't know if you all saw the new line at Target. It's absolutely beautiful by French Bowl of small electrics and toasters, blenders that really have a lot of personal style to them. When it's scary because we tend to think of millennials as not having money, and their income is going to exceed boomers next year. By 2020, their income will eclipse both boomers and Gen X combined. Now keep in mind that a part of that income is going to be inheritance. So, but still, it's significant in terms of their influence at any rate. 46% of the nation's income by 2020. By 2025, 1.4 trillion and 30% of total retail sales. And just to sort of put it in a visual, so along the bottom, I don't know if you can see it, runs 2010 to 25, and the red line is where we are today, okay? If we put in Gen X, they're quite stable. Not a tremendous amount of growth, not a tremendous amount of fall off. They're about 6.4 trillion. They'll increase slightly between now and 2026. Take a look at boomers. They're going to drop to 1.1 trillion by 2025. So engaging younger consumers is extremely important. Now, there are 82 million boomers, so they're still going to have a lot of influence with what's purchased. Then look at Gen Y, or millennials. They're going from 1.1 trillion to 8.3 trillion in income. Very significant. And it literally will change the way we develop products if we're still developing it. So the next question on the reality check survey was, in the next 10 to 15 years, what % of Gen Y are going to be parents? 60, 70, or 80%? The correct answer is 60%. Actually, that's not the correct answer. I remember this statistic, so I apologize. The correct answer is 80%. It's an extremely high percent. Surprisingly, 62% of us got that grade, which is terrific because I was really surprised. I thought in my head it was going to be closer to 60%. We're going to move on to the next generation, Gen X. So they're very practical. They're very, they face the facts, very pragmatic. They love community, very much into things that allow them to buy local, support local business. Very storage critical. They're living in smaller houses than they had planned to at this point, in large part due to the recession. They like homes with flexible spaces. They love do-it-yourself, probably not as much as Gen Y, but they like it a lot. They treat pets as family members. This generation strangely spends more on pet products, despite the fact that they're half the size of both boomers and millennials. They spend more on pet products than any other generation. They see their home as both a hive where the family comes together and shares information and shares experience, and as a haven where they can, have individual spaces and relax. And so let's ignore for a second that he looks like a serial killer, because it was it was the only image I could find. And Gen X, where do they stand? Okay, their salary is depressed. They have more debt than any other generation in terms of per capita debt. They really, that means for us, we have to really give them reasons to buy. We have to be very clear. Our role as adapters is to give them very clear reasons why they need the product, as opposed to what they have now or as opposed to what they don't have. They're deep in family formation. They are right in the thick of having kids. That means, of course, for us that we have to adapt to new desires for shared family experience. Gen X, on their top of their list of things that they consistently talk about is family. Family time is important. We're not all going to have our noses in our iPads. We're going to spend some family time together. So more balance, as we talked about, they're really redefining the work-life mix. They're really saying, look, we're not going to be our parents. We're not going to spend all our time at the office. The payoff isn't there. So that means for us, we have to look at products and say, how can we prove this to promote family time? How can we make ourselves a part of that experience? And they're more practical. They're much more fiscally prudent. So that means for us, of course, we have to adapt to that value mentality. Gen Xers, you can see the debt figure, about $47,000 in debt on average, with more than 60% of it coming from mortgages and student loans. So again, this is just sort of a placeholder to give you an idea of where their heads are. They were really the hardest hit. The boomers were initially the hardest hit by the Great Recession with a lot of savings loss, but they've regained a lot of that. Gen Xers never got the chance to make some of the savings choices that boomers did, and so they don't have a tremendous amount of savings in terms of 401k and other options. They're working harder. 26% worked more hours in 2010 than in 1975, and they're making less. So 17% are still underwater in their home, meaning that their mortgage is worth more, or rather, their mortgage is bigger than what their house is actually worth if they sold it. It's a very high number, and it certainly affects purchasing. Their goal as a generation, again, as we said, to create family time, to create experiences. Mealtime is very important to them. 84% of them say that their favorite part of the day is when they all eat together. So that's something that is very different from boomers, trying to recreate that. And that certainly is a very housewares type of sensibility that we can participate in. 68% of them report that they eat most of their meals as a family at a kitchen table, and not in a formal dining room. Also, foodieism is definitely very strong in this generation. And it doesn't have to be a highbrow food, whereas boomers tend to go more for luxury foods. Gen X is particular to recreating favorites, like chocolate caramel popcorn, or popcorn with bacon, things like that. That sounds so good. Gourmet cupcakes. That girl on the left, she's going to be a problem. I can tell you that right now. She just looks like she's a troublemaker, I can tell. So now let's move on to boomers, the basics. Boomers are reinventing themselves. They're more active, they have more energy than they ever expected to have, so they're really moving on that and acting on it. They are looking for an oasis, an escape in design. They're very used to design. Target made it a part of their everyday. They're three-generation caregivers, which they realized but did not plan on. Their kids have moved. Many of their kids now live at home. Between 2 and 3 years after college is the U.S. average right now. It's extremely high. So considering that they themselves were expected to move out after college and stay out. Very involved grandparents to their kids' kids. They're downsizing, but they're really trying not to sacrifice luxury, and they try to find luxury in those even small experiences. And they're about smart aging in place. They really want to sort of settle into aging. They want to do it smart. They're preserving their health, preserving their wellness, and they're about practical beauty. So in other words, if something's practical, they do expect it to have a design aesthetic. They expect it to have something. And as we said, they're luxury foodies. 2 out of 5 boomers say that they've become responsible for the care of a parent in the last year. That's a really high 40%. And that's just in the last year. So we can expect that that's something that's going to. And for us, that means products with ergonomics, dealing with products that are safe for their parents to use and that type of thing. Okay, more creepy people. Show all your teeth. Isn't it crazy? It's like, you gotta wonder what the casting call looked like. Don't come unless you were born with 7 extra teeth. Understanding boomers. More empty nesters. And what's interesting is they're really reinventing their home for the next life stage, you know. So dining rooms are becoming crafting rooms. They're repurposing a lot of the rooms in their house as their kids do move out. That means that, you know, that we have to make certain adaptations as well. Like we said, they're 3- and 4-generation caregivers, which means that our part in adaptation is how are the products that we're developing and the assortments that we're putting out there addressing that. They have more money. Many are now mortgage-free. And at their peak earnings, they represent 44% of U.S. wealth and just over 46% of consumer spending. That means that we have to adapt to luxury market standards because these people are still, have the ability to spend. They're more health conscious, so they're much more proactive than reactive on health, especially within the generation compared to where they were 10 years ago. And so that means for us that health and wellness for this generation is a critical concern and that we need to adapt to how we're going to respond to that concern and that desire. They're really redefining retirement, very empowered, very engaged. 8,000 are turning 65 a day for the next 18 years. And like we said, they're learning technology as it becomes more intuitive, and they just love being active and feeling active. This is a Sphere trending quote, and I've always loved it. In our heads, we're all 25, and that's really very much where they live. Sizing down is kind of the next chapter, and elder boomers are starting to head to that. So they're reinventing some of their home, as we said. And home purchases are starting to drop in this generation, which is good and bad. As home purchases drop, object purchases tend to rise, so they start spending more on experiences and less on really large purchases like homes. I think the thing, scary people. I think the thing that's funny or really impressive about this generation of boomers is how incredibly powerful women are. Women are still the primary consumers. They're the healthiest, wealthiest, and most active generation. 55 to 64-year-olds outspend consumers in nearly every other consumer in nearly every product category. But as you can see, one of the top things, and this is scaled in order of spend, which we didn't give percentages, but we can do that if you want to, and we've given resources on where this information comes from, so you can probably look it up. But you'll notice that they're buying experiences. They're not buying objects. So it's important to tie your experience to an object, to make sure that, if you feel like the product you're producing or the assortment is giving family time, is granting that, then you need to say it. Boomers are also really defining where luxury is right now. So we thought it would be interesting to sort of help look at what luxury is not. Luxury is not at this point about importance to others, about traditional status icons. What luxury is, it's about lifestyle. Luxury delivers lifestyle. It delivers what's important to me in a very almost personal way. It's not about being the most expensive. It is about being the most desired. It's not about products that give you just superior function and technology, but certainly it's that. It's also products that give you aesthetics, products that give you learning. KitchenAid is a great example of this. You buy a KitchenAid product and you have learnings with that and how to use it and how to live with it well beyond the point that you actually put your money down. It's not about being impulsive and extravagant. That's abhorrent to this generation now. It's about really looking into things and making sure that there's a purposeful reason to own it. And it's not about being exclusive by limitation, by how few there are. It is about being unique, by customized experience, which necessarily makes it somewhat limited. But it's really people are buying experiences. And then finally, active seniors. Active seniors, 69 and over, are entering what we call a second middle age because they're too healthy, they're too smart, they're too alert to treat them the way that society used to treat senior citizens. You know, it was like, okay, you just had this picture in your head of, oh, well, they're not active participants anymore. Now, it's true that not a tremendous amount of their personal spend goes into home products. But they're an important, it's about 3.9% actually. But they're an important group to pay attention to because boomers are taking care of them and they are giving boomers money. They're moving in with their boomer kids and the money that they have is being saved for boomers. So boomers are helping them make purchasing decisions in many cases. Again, very much spending on experiences, very much putting money into mental fitness, health and wellness certainly, time with grandchildren. They're very much aware of safety and security, and certainly ergonomics continue to be very important for this generation. They do spend thoughtfully, but they are also very much looking for, to create experiences. 82% of seniors prefer to stay at home even after they begin to need day-to-day assistance. So they're looking to, again, age securely in a single space. They're more dependent. And they're mentored and helped by their families as opposed to external sources. And that, for us, means that we have to adapt to the rebirth of the extended family and multiple age groups living in a home. Certainly, they have more health issues, which is a real opportunity for wellness desires in meeting those. We talked about the fact that they want more experiences. So for us, we have to remember that they have a very limited need for objects. And that boomers are wanting to take care of them, wanting to keep them comfortable. So that's, who we're really talking about. But it begins with understanding how they're living. And they're certainly more frugal. What's interesting, fiscally, is that Gen Y thinks about money very much the way this generation does because they have grown up in the face of a sudden impact recession. And so, the attitudes are actually fairly close in terms of fiscal concerns. I love this graph by the Active Aging Coalition because they said when you think about people, when you think about active seniors, to make sure that it's a balanced approach of spiritual, mental, physical, and social. And then finally, one of the things that we looked at is what are the top complaints of seniors. So again, this is an opportunity for product. And how do we address these things? Reality check. So which age group controls 43% of the nation's wealth? 65, 55 to 64, 45 to 54. 65 and over is actually the answer. So now a lot of that is going to be inherited over the course of the next 20 to 30 years. But their control, their wealth, enables boomer spending. It's a horrible way to think about it, but in point of fact, boomers walk around depending on a certain degree of inheritance, and that enables their healthy spending in this economy. So, slow growth era. We wanted to talk just a little bit about slow growth because, as we said, things. I think a lot of us, even in forecasting and in product development, we keep thinking, okay, if we come up with the right item, we're going to turn a corner, and it's all going to be rosy again, and people are going to be spending like drunken sailors, but that's not going to happen. And part of us adapting is acknowledging the fact that it's not going to happen. So facing the fact there's a problem is the first step. So we wanted to sort of give some figures to just show you what the underpinnings of that belief are. A lot of even though the recession, in truth, as by definition, was really only a few years long, its effects have stayed, and people are spending as if they're still living in a strongly recessionary period. Unemployment was at 5% at the recession start, but it's never even gotten back to that. It's hovering now. Last month it was at 6.6 to 6.7% for the last 3-month period. So and people are aware of that. That's a benchmark that consumers, the average consumer, readily understands. So there were also reductions in earnings. There were reductions in force. In other words, like headcount was cut at a lot of companies that found ways of making do with the number of people they had and didn't necessarily hire into it, which is one of the things that's keeping unemployment somewhat depressed or somewhat elevated. So, we just wanted to give you some figures to sort of look at about that. In that type of an environment, there is more price competition, so we have to adapt by differentiating, because that's the way we're going to survive. There are many more local entrepreneurs. It's easier to start a small business, oddly, in this environment, and so that means that we have to adapt to more competitors. In part of it is certainly consumer to consumer, things like Etsy, which are making consumers into manufacturers in some cases. But a lot of it is also channel migration. And anybody here who is in grocery, for example, grocery, drugstores, all channels that have clawed business off of other businesses like department stores and said, you know what, we need to present ourselves in a lifestyle way and be more to the consumer walking in the door than I'm going for toilet paper and paper towels and some floor cleaner. While they're in there, they're thinking about food, and I'm going to sell them food prep products, or those are the types of things that sort of that convenience is very important. More expectations. Consumers in general just expect a lot more in a slow growth era. They want you to deliver very clearly on a specific value platform, whether that's price, whether that's function, whether it's material. So that means that we have to be more careful about the offer that we put forward. And more trade-offs. Consumers, it used to be just Gen X because they were suffering so much, but millennials are also real trade-off consumers. And the example I always use is they will say, I'm going to buy an espresso machine, and I'm going to pay for it by not going to Starbucks for 3 weeks. And they'll make that, so we have to adapt to that idea of thoughtful consumption and building the value equation. On the positive side, their housing stats are consistently positive. And that will grow economic confidence, because many consumers see their home as sort of a savings account of sorts, a resource for income. So when we look at the stats, we certainly see that that's on the rise, and that's as of end of January. We showed this last year, but I wanted to show it again because the figures haven't changed surprisingly. House does a survey where they ask people what rooms they're going to change in their house and how much they're going to spend on it. And this is an amalgam, but when you look at kitchen remodels, which again, very important to our industry, of course, it is by far and away the highest amount of renovation in the house and the greatest investment, because it's seen as an extremely important lifestyle room that the whole family enjoys. Also, we look at how consumers continue to rediscover DIY. How often do they cook at home? And the fact that these are habits that people will not be moving away from. Also, what's going to work in the housewares industry's favor is there is a real trend towards very simplified foods. So this Midwestern food movement, which is about very hearty cooking, using products that are natural and things like that. As long as grocery prices stay stable, we should see that continue. And then we also just wanted to sort of look at household types and remind people, not in specifics, but just that there are a lot of different types of households. So continually challenge yourselves on who's walking through the door, whether they have any intention of getting married, whether they, we tend to assume certain things about the guests that we have, and the lifestyles that they have. We always like to look at the Hispanic community because it's such an important, and anybody who's interested, we just amassed a large amount of information on this group of consumers. And so they represent a tremendous amount of growth in our markets. They are really going to shore up the new housing. And if we look at, the other thing to keep in mind is that they are on average about 10 years younger than the American consumer, or the American consumer average. So it's important to realize that they're a big growth opportunity and not to miss that. And then finally, under adapt, we've got to adapt, of course, to e-commerce growth. 2/3 of Americans have smartphones, and they're using them as definitely a part of the shopping experience. When we look at, there was a time when we said, well, apparel, people aren't going to buy a lot of apparel online because they want to try it, they want to see how it fits, how it feels. But, almost 10% of apparel purchases in the U.S. are done online. So we have to understand that that's something that is definitely going to keep moving across, different categories of business as people gain comfort levels. We thought it was interesting. This was actually put forward by Sphere Trending, again, somebody we really depend on. They had done a sort of study on the love-hate of consuming online. And they said, what people hate is that tech never shuts down. There's no respite, ever. But what they love, of course, is that they're connected 24/7. They can find out anything 24/7. They can shop 24/7. We hate the fact that it's really replaced face-to-face interaction at retail. But we love the fact that we finally have a voice. I mean, we as consumers can raise a product up into public view very quickly, or we can complain about it and force companies to make it right. We hate the fact that tech limits the retail experience to a degree. In other words, you don't get to walk through a store a lot of times. You are sort of object-focused many times. But it certainly simplifies the retail experience at the same time. We hate the fact that we get tons and tons of offers, and a lot of times it actually enables or increases impulse purchases of things that we wouldn't have even thought about. But it also allows a tremendous amount of research. So I love the idea that consumers, we have to acknowledge the fact that there is a love-hate relationship, that we have to be both. And then this just talks about, I'm going to skip past this one, but it's about Comstor data about how people go on the internet, where they spend more time. If any of you didn't get to see Google's presentation yesterday, it'll be on the IHA site. I encourage you to see it if you do any online business, because it was really terrific. But what was great about it most was a visual that they gave about what time. They did a clock of the day and showed increases. Okay, during this time of the day, we're on our smartphones. During this time of the day, we're at desktop. And just the traffic online and how it flowed was very interesting. And it was a great way to direct efforts. We also talked about local websites and just wanted to sort of show, when people look at local websites, what are they looking for? These are just the top 6. You can, I don't know, most of you can probably read them, but list of products was number 1. Price lists were number 2. The simple phone number was number 3. How do I get in touch with this store or small business? Physical address, opening hours. So a lot of times we just want to make sure that we serve people by making that available. And then this, again, I'll let you look at it in your own time. But there was a survey done on how important will online retail be, and how much of what people, not just online retail, but how much of what people buy will be influenced by what they see on the internet or the type of research that they do. Reality check. Among U.S. internet users, blank percent with incomes above $75,000 are on Facebook. We wanted to sort of give some figures on who is on Facebook, what kind of clout do they have? What kind of income do they have? So 33, 53, or 73%. The actual answer was 73%. 73% of internet users above $75,000 are on Facebook. That said, and again, we thought it was important to bring this one forward because 75% of us got it wrong. So just something to keep in mind. The conversion rate, just as an aside, conversion rates on Twitter are actually higher. So yes, Facebook is about the experiencing of your brand, but in terms of people pinning things that they actually buy later on, Pinterest is 1 in 5 versus about 1 in 20. So 1 in 5 people who pin something, 1 in 5 people who pin something on Facebook wind up buying it later. Another reality check slide. What percentage of pins are food and drink related? 9.5, 19.5, or 29.5%? 29.5. It's another reason why Pinterest is very good for our industry in particular. That's a full third of things that are pinned on Pinterest have to do with food or drink. We obviously all have a good sense of how important that is because 65% of respondents got that correct. So let's move on to Inspire. Inspire is about, we're in a period of less consumer strength, more abundant retail choices, a lot more peer influence, blurred channels and categories. We can walk into a store and find product that we never expected to see there, and also the socialization of food. But those are all real opportunities to inspire. Inspire is about inspiring the consumer with new ways to live, new ways to experience design. And one of the important things of that is in almost every single housewares category, we're seeing a strong movement continue from function to things that are more fun and certainly more fashionable. The appearance of objects, like anywhere else in our lives, as objects become social, as we start using them more in front of other people, the need for good design rises and people want it more. So millennials in particular do a lot of their entertaining with other millennials. They have people in the house. They do prep work with people, which means that we're expecting fashion attributes out of products that previously we had really looked at as functional. I'll jump past this. It's a Dwell study that just shows among affluent consumers, and by affluent we mean over $100,000 average household income a year, who says that design is important? Will they pay more for design and so on? Just some other great examples of design and its importance, even in drawer and on countertop and in every conceivable catalog. That's the French Bull product from Target on the lower right. But we see the kitchen as a mode of creative expression. Task-oriented objects have definitely become examples of personal expression. And so we really have to look at every aspect of that. For tomorrow, there's at 12 o'clock, just to give it a quick plug, Lee Eisman and I are doing a joint presentation on the importance of design and color in housewares. And there's a lot of interesting product in there as well. Clearly, I didn't take out these slides I meant to. Sorry about that. But they'll be in your final presentation. Maker culture. Home economics are starting to show up back again in grammar schools, which is terrific. So, we spend a tremendous amount of money and time, and the idea of conserving what we put our groceries in is becoming more important. It's a tremendous source of waste. 40% of what we grow in the US winds up in the trash. And people are becoming very aware of that. We're spending more on groceries, and so we want to put more into that. Also, one of the things that we're seeing at this show, and we certainly saw at the European shows like Frankfurt, is that evolution of next level knowledge. I'll give you an example. Cupcakes. Cupcakes have been big for a long time. People love them. But now we're starting to see it move from basic skills. So you've sold out these basic skills into a lot of different channels, into a lot of different consumers. What do you do with them now? What do you sell them next? And that interest by consumers of taking it to the next level, to an almost sort of competitive level, is actually very interesting and a real opportunity. Certainly, food storage, food preservation, whether it's canning and preserving or actual just preservation of freshness, very, very important. We talked about that. And also food dehydration is also moving up. This just talks a little bit. This was a quote from Sphere that they said, the newest generation of youth will have an unprecedented influence on their parents' purchases. They are young and connected, informed, and their opinion is valued. Expect reverse mentoring. Reverse mentoring is when parents listen to their kids. You know, it's a change from, it's a sociological change from kids wanting to be like their parents to parents wanting to be like their kids. 40% of all Gen Y are already parents, and in the next year, 80% of them will be parents, which we talked about before. Children's market is still important. We certainly acknowledge the fact that it has to address safety issues and make sure that it's safe for kids to use, but know that doing things together is still moving forward. And also, along with DIY, we're seeing a lot of movement in GIY, grow it yourself, as parts of even new home construction, of making space to actually grow vegetables in your own home, or at least herbs that can be used. Ethnic diversity on the table is also very important and advancing. 1 in every $7 being spent in the US is spent on ethnic foods. And just look at the number of people that said that they made Mexican food at home in the last month, and the number that made Chinese food. Sorry, there's some kind of problem in color on that screen, but and then we just talked a little bit about, you know, what kind of cultural curiosity and how we can build sales. We can build item sales by, you know, everything from food prep to food presentation that integrates different types of cultural interests. As we eat at home more and entertain at home more, we infuse that experience with other cultures. So what percentage of American consumers entertain regularly at home? 45, 55, or 65%? The answer, 65%, very high percentage. And yet for all of us in the housewares industries, 77% of us got it wrong. So something to keep in mind. We wanted to put this up here because we're hearing a lot of talk about health and wellness, and you know, but if you ask people around the show, what's health and wellness to you? You come up with everything from a personal massager to, you know, it's important that product ideation stems from a sort of systemic understanding of what the American consumer defines health and wellness as. Optimistic spirit, mind and body connection, healthy relationships. Some of the hottest new apps in the App Store are on meditation. You know, so start looking outside of just the immediate used to definition of health and wellness, because there are a lot of opportunities there as well. So this was the result of a survey of Americans. What helps define your idea of well-being? 47% said that it was about their primary relationships with their spouse and family. 24% said it was about their health. So right there, all the things we've been talking about, more family time, being healthier. 8% say it's a nice place to live. 7% say it's a money and financial situation. Now that is a big change. I mean, Americans traditionally look at, boomers in particular, have a tendency to look at financial stability as being a security blanket of happiness. So to see these types of shifts in American opinion is really, it tells you a lot. And then community and friends, that's the other big change, work fulfillment, 3%. You know, it's just important to keep it in mind if we all want to keep our best people and keep them happy. Proactive well-being. Again, products that address the aggressive acquisition of health and the aggressive maintenance of health. Portion control, super important. You know, and you can, again, watch the Google the Google presentation from yesterday, because they talk about how to sort of keep your finger on the pulse of what consumers are doing, what they're talking about, what their inquiries are on Google. When you look at portion control on Google, you see a steady, large increase in in the fact that people are searching it. So it's not about product sales necessarily, of course that's there, but really interesting presentation. Some of the primary concerns: reduced preparation time, portion control, contamination management, food safety, that whole fear factor of, you know, it's a big driver. Freshness preservation, and maximizing nutrition. Someone said recently, I think it might have been a Nielsen survey, I can't remember, but they said that maximizing nutrition has not been as hot a topic as it was when the last time it was this hot a topic was when microwaves came out, and people realized that, you know, you could really preserve nutritional value. Reality check: what percentage of all snacks are consumed at home? Now, I had wanted to replace this picture because it's kind of creepy. It's like, let me feed you chips, baby. It's just weird, and he just has this dodo look on his face. Chips. So, sorry. So, the choices were 60, 70, or 80% of snacks are consumed at home. It was a surprising 80%. And again, just to shine a light on that, 71% misperception rate. So when we look at this industry and how important snacks are, and the fact that people are consuming their home, when you look at DIY, what is the next opportunity? What are we, you know, I mean, what we try to do at Lifetime and you know, with a lot of the companies that we work with, is to say, what do these mean to the products that we're going to create? If people are eating snacks at home, how can we enable that? How can we take that with the perfect storm of DIY and the perfect storm of, you know, all that's going on television that elevates food and home prep, you know, and make it into something? A key factor is authenticity right now. Authenticity, purity, the ease of ability to tell something you know, is non-GMO and all of those things. So people are just trying to get their arms around some very basic assumptions and challenge basic assumptions that they made about food and its freshness. I already gave this already, so if you're paying attention, you know the answer already. But 40% of what of U.S. produce winds up in the trash. 62% were correct, so the fact that that awareness is high among us indicates that it's probably fairly high among consumers as well. We also engage through lifestyle, and you know, I'm not going to go through the specifics. Obviously, grilling is important. It's become a year-round concern now. But one of the things that we need to look at is we need to stop looking at objects and look at our storefronts, our assortments, and say, are we speaking to consumers and are we speaking to retailers in terms of the way people live and the way they want to live, and holistically inside the idea of a solution or a lifestyle, rather than just saying, you know, okay, do I have an ice cube maker? Do I have, you know, a grill cleaner, and so on and so forth. Another reality check: what percentage of meals are prepared in the home currently in the U.S.? 72%. That is great, great news for us. It is up 8% from 2 years ago. Very large increase, really healthy, tremendous amount of opportunity for all of us. We didn't do so good on the responses. Only about half of people got it right. But still, understanding now that it's a tremendous opportunity, at-home preparation is very important. And then the other thing about inspiring is we've got to look at, some people are doing a great job, and Crate is one of them, of really approaching the consumer with lifestyle experiences and lifestyle visions, rather than just saying, here's everything we make in glass, here's everything we make in, you know. So retail's a very important part. And then finally, motivation. So when we look at motivation, we have to understand that motivating sales through focus on the way what consumers aspire to be. Top two, new skills and knowledge, learning, and a lot of that is DIY, health and wellness, And also, meaningful differentiation from competitors is also extremely important. And finally, creating experiential retail. We're living in an era of conservatism, so we have to understand that people are being motivated by things that are very intangible. And sometimes, when something's intangible, how do you put it on a product? You know, so that challenges categories like packaging. That challenges merchandising from a retail perspective. I'm not sure I kept the statistic in here. I might have taken it out. But 48% of housewares purchases are gift purchases. That's incredible. That says a lot about how everybody here has built the industry. But when you acknowledge that that's a fact, then what does that mean in terms of the way we package products? Are we packaging for a self-purchase too much? So the old strategy was to focus on objects. Obviously, the new strategy is to focus on skills, to focus on experience, to focus on enabling the way people want to live. The old is focusing on learning basic skills, and now we continue with that because that represents a strong, stable, continuing business. But we also have to focus on learning new and special aspects of existing skills. Reacting to a product with logic is sort of old strategy. New strategy is reacting to product with emotion. I hate the fact that I always use Apple examples, but all the Apple ads that played through the Super Bowl didn't talk about a single function. You know, they talked about aspiring to communicate, aspiring to express yourself. And again, acquiring basic skills, moving on to acquiring professional skills. Because professional is the new aspiration for people who just 2 years ago were really about just learning the basics and learning how to cook at home and clean their own carpet and all of those things. Okay, another serial killer. What's he thinking? I'm going to kill you. Meaningful differentiation, what it's not. It's not about price and quality alone. It is about price, quality, design, and the experience that you deliver. It's not about generic function-only focused design. It is about function with a style point of view. It's not about the same item, different color. It's about improvement and innovation. And it's not about, from a retail perspective, having something for everyone. It's about products and services for a specific targeted audiences. Some of the hottest new stores, some of the stores that are getting the most attention, stores like Whisk in New York, that is basically a DIY baking type of store that's right beneath the Flatiron Building. You know, you look at stores like Italy, which is very much about audiences that love everything that is and will be Italian. So we look at the value wheel, and we did this a couple of years ago and said, okay, what are we seeing sort of rise to the top in terms of how does the consumer today define value? You know, we've talked about, okay, it's price, it's quality, it's design, it's experience, but what are the other things that keep coming up in all of these surveys that are weighing in? We decided to redo the wheel that we've done in the past. We just finished it yesterday, actually. And some of the things that we're seeing really rise in the conversation are brand ethics. Service levels are coming back in. Certainly ease of use. Durability really, really rising, especially in any conversation that has to do with millennials. Durability is very important to them. Not just for price, for investment, and I don't want something to break just after I have it, but also for landfill issues and making sure that there's less waste. Motivate with healthful options. We're starting to see a lot of healthy options show up in unexpected places, so that going to Burger King doesn't have to be a guilty experience anymore because you can have fries that are 40% less fat and 30% less calories. You can go into a Duane Reade in New York, and I'm sure that nationwide it's very much the same. You can go into a drugstore and get healthier choices, and whereas 3 years ago it was like, well, I can get one of those Kraft cheese and cracker packs, but now you can get absolutely everything. They're like small grocery stores, and we're seeing that type of creep, and migration happen across categories. We wanted to look at the idea of shop local, which for those of you who are smaller stores, we always say, think big but act small. Even if you're a huge corporation, For those of you who know Meijer, Meijer is a terrific example of this because they're very personal. You walk into those stores, and as big as they are, it's a supermarket chain in the Midwest for those of you who don't know them, you feel like that their assortments are talking right to you. So, so when we look at how can we, as retailers and manufacturers, help people act more local, 60% of consumers say they want to support the local economy. 53% say they want one-of-a-kind items that they find at smaller retail. 44% say it's more convenient to shop local. So when you look at these stats about loyalty and very personal emotional feelings, driving sales and development through emotion is extremely important. It's not always tangible, and a lot of times it's a lot more work, but it's definitely worth it. Kitchen motivations. I love this quote from an MTV survey. They said, consumers don't leave because there's a compelling reason to leave. They leave because there's not a compelling reason to stay. And that is a very, very millennial attitude. Loyalty is not even seen as something that's earned in a long-term experience. Loyalty is earned in every experience, in every product, in every purchase. So we just wanted to look at what are kitchen motivations? What do people say that they want to do most in their kitchen? They want to improve the look and feel, which speaks to decorative value. They want to improve function. They want to upgrade their appliances, and they want to improve storage. And a lot of times that means, collapsibility and things like that. Engagement through education, again, Crate and Barrel, just a terrific example of people who are mixing products and categories to create simple, lifestyle, aspirational statements that speak to pretty much everything that's in this presentation, between cleanliness, the ability to keep things clean, very simple foods, all those things that we talked about. And certainly motivate with knowledge. Whole Foods, another great example of people who are creating more educational experiences at retail. You can look at other industries like Athleta, great example. They have classes in store, workout classes, so that's all terrific. What percentage of U.S. adults watch TV cooking shows? 53%. Nice, high percent, very supportive. I think that sometimes we get so used to it that we forget how influential they are. And then motivational retail, and just looking at how retail has changed. Specialty stores and their ability to bring excitement was the 1990s look. But today, we look at local stores to bring excitement. Single channel versus omni-channel. Retailer empowered sort of business growth and interest, whereas it's really consumer empowered. People are finding out what they want to learn next from other consumers, not from retailers. So it means that we have to stay in touch. We have to see what's online, what's on Pinterest, what's on social media sites that interest people, so we can stay abreast of the consumer instead of the consumer feeling like they have to stay abreast of us. And clear boundaries in channels versus blurred boundaries in channels. Now you can expect anything anywhere, and that is a desirable thing, because having a new type of experience and a new reason to go to retail, whether it's online or in store, is important. Story is a terrific store in New York, and I just wanted to show them to you because they're so interesting. They completely reassort their store every 3 months, and they completely reassort everything, and they're called stories. So for 3 months, it'll be a wellness story, and then it's color story, and then it's love story, and then it's art story, and it just keeps traffic. They keep showing up on blogs and things like that. Certainly CrossFit, but if you look at Reebok has always been great at capturing interest, fringe interest, and help bringing it into the mainstream, help people sort of actualize things that they're doing. And so here they worked with CrossFit, and they're doing in-store events and things like that. So we've gone from a mass approach to niche, and from products to solutions, to explore our assortment, to explore your passions. That's what exciting retail is about right now. It used to be a boring journey of expected results with somebody's definition, and now good retail is an exciting journey of discovery. What are you discovering? What are you teaching me? So we're almost 3 minutes over, so I'm really going to let you go, but I'll close with this one. Perceptions and reality. The perception is that people will pay more for trend. The reality is the trend is non-negotiable, and whether that means color or whether it means pattern, people expect it. It's a part of it's considered pretty much a basic now. Products are function, and products are function and lifestyle. Luxury is defined by others, versus what it really is luxury is defined by me. It's a very personal thing. I want to be able to tell you as a retailer or as a manufacturer what I want, and I want you to react to it. Perception of buying for others, whereas buying for others in self is actually across consumer markets. You're seeing a lot of retailers give messages of self-indulgence. Go ahead, you deserve it, things like that, especially in fourth quarter, which is a real shift. Inspirations from brands and mass media versus inspirations from friends, users, owners. The purveyor no longer is the sole influencer on whether something is desirable or not. Consumers trusting corporations, we've said it before, consumers consistently trust each other. Buying objects versus buying experience, purchasing focused on price, purchases focused on value. And finally, consumers being responsible for the environmental and social advances was the old way of thinking. Now consumers expect corporations to be responsible for those things. So whether you're a retailer or a manufacturer is something to keep in mind. Does anybody have any questions I can't answer? Yeah, I still remember. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to come up. Thanks. And thanks again for getting up so early. Have a great day. It will be. Yeah.